Justin Fields and the Jets coaching staff blow a winnable game against the Denver Broncos and remind us why the Jets are the worst team in the NFL in 2025. Locked On Jets starts now.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Sunday, October 12th, 2025, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. A big shout out to you, everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets, and today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. On today's show, we are breaking down the New York Jets' sixth loss of 2025. They fell to the Denver Broncos today, 13-11 in London, to fall to 0-6 on the 2025 season. On today's show, we're going to give some praise for one unit which showed up and plenty of blame to a coaching staff and an offense which did everything in their power to squander a great defensive performance. I was at the game today. I'm actually in London right now, so I had a bit of a different perspective than I usually get. So usually I'm watching the game at home like you are, and you get the benefits of all the different replay angles. You get the benefits of the announcers breaking the plays down. But there are certain things you get watching the game live, particularly some things I noticed that do not speak well of the Jets coaching staff, which we'll talk about later. But whether you watch this game from home or whether you, like me, were in London at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I think you saw a dismal offensive performance. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. And it was particularly dismal at the quarterback position. Sometimes the quarterback gets too much credit when the team wins and too much blame when the team loses. That was not one of those days. Today was not one of those days. Justin Fields was absolutely terrible in this game. Frequently, people ask me, would you rather the Jets be good on offense or good on defense? And my answer is always, I want to be good in both areas. I want a balanced football team. You could ask me, would I rather the Jets be a good run team or a good pass team? I guess I'd lean towards the pass because passing is more correlated with winning in the NFL, but I'd like to be good at both because there are days where your defense is going to be bad. If you have a good offense, the offense can carry you those days. There are days where your offense is going to be bad. If you have a good defense, your defense can carry you those days. Days where your passing game is going to be bad. And, then if you have a good run game, it can carry you. Days where your run game's off, if you have a good passing game, it can carry you. The reverse is true for bad teams. The Jets are a team, they're pretty much bad in every phase of the game. And on a day like today, they just always do just enough to lose. The defense finally shows up. The defense finally delivers a classic Jets defensive performance. And I mean that as a compliment. This looked like one of those vintage Jets defenses. Through the years, we've had a lot of very good Jets defenses, and the team was sunk by a bad offense. Today's game reminded me a lot of that. And I think we knew we were in trouble at the beginning because the Jets finished their first two drives with 6 points combined. And that might sound good. You may say two scoring drives. Well, the first drive started at the Denver 37 because the Jets defense finally forced its first turnover of the year, a fumble forced by Jarvis Brownlee Jr., making his first Jets start. And the Jets did not get a first down on that drive. Jets' second drive starts on the Denver 24 because of a kickoff return by Kenny Nwangwu, who almost took it the distance. Again, the Jets don't get a first down on that drive. They settle for a field goal. The Jets did not get a first down in this game till late in the second quarter. I mean, it was ugly. And if you look at the complete totals of the offense in this game, well, you have those two field goal drives, which account for 6 points. In the second half, the Jets started their first drive at their own 43. So again, a short field. They converted that into a field goal. So that's 9 points. The other 2 points came on plays the defense produced because they got a safety on a holding call in the end zone. So in this game, the Jets offense produced 3 field goals. All 3 of them came on short fields. And then they scored 2 points on a safety the defense produced. That tells the story of the offensive performance. I mean, there's so many ways we could go to describe how bad the offense was in this game. One of their most successful plays came on their final drive. It was a botched shotgun snap, which Breece Hall picked up and ran for 7 yards. A play which was essentially a fumbled snap turned into one of their best offensive plays. It was a completely broken play. That's how broken the Jets offense was in this game. You sitting at home or at the stadium with me had more net passing yards than Justin Fields did in this game. Now, I know you're going to look at the stat. You'll say, well, I mean, it was obviously a poor performance by Fields, but he had 45 passing yards. The thing is, if you subtract the yardage that the Jets lost on sacks, Fields ended the game with -10 net passing yards. So you watching at home or at the stadium with me had more net passing yards than Justin Fields did in this game. It speaks volumes. The Denver Broncos, we knew their defense had a ferocious pass rush. We talked about it a lot heading into this game. 9 sacks. And that's probably a sign the Jets' offensive line didn't play well. But if you were watching that game, I mean, it certainly seemed like Justin Fields had a lot of culpability for most of those sacks, where he was just holding the ball too long. And I'll tell you, like, my perception watching the game live was there were some plays where nobody was open, and we could have a discussion about how poor the Jets receiver room is. And I think part of the problem with the Jets on offense, it's something we don't talk about a lot, is there's no big play receiver. Garrett Wilson's a great receiver. He's a chain mover, though. There's nobody who's a deep threat on this offense. And you want to say Arian Smith? I'm sorry, but Arian Smith's not a deep threat till he proves he's a deep threat. There are a million guys who have come through the NFL who had a fast 40 time who did not prove to be deep threats. This is a horribly constructed receiver room. But that's not an excuse for Justin Fields, because even on plays where nobody's open, Fields could have done more with it. Could have thrown the ball away. I mean, he can't hold the ball for as long as he's holding it. He was erratic. He wasn't throwing accurate passes. He wasn't making good reads. This Jets offense, when we entered the season, had a clear blueprint. The run game had to be dominant, and you had to get enough from the passing game. And part of the hope was that the run game would be so dominant that it would make it easier to throw. Instead, what you have right now is a run game that can't do close to enough, and a passing game which is completely lost. Heading into the season, one of the things we were hoping would be that the good version of Justin Fields would flash more frequently than we saw in those first 4 seasons with the Steelers and with the Bears, and that the bad version of Justin Fields would appear less frequently. Unfortunately, we're getting the bad version of Justin Fields an awful lot. I mean, Justin Fields' second best game to date was that Monday night game against the Miami Dolphins, and I thought he played okay in that game. When we're 6 weeks into the season and that's your second best game, that's a problem. And, it's been easy to try and deflect blame from Justin Fields and some of his other really lousy starts, like last week against Dallas or week 2 against Buffalo, because at least you could say, well, it wasn't all Fields' fault. The defense played terribly. It didn't matter what we got at quarterback. I don't know that I buy that, but there's nobody else to can blame in this one. Fields was just so bad that he gave you no chance to win this game. And you could say that against Dallas last week. You could say it week 2 against Buffalo. The difference is there's nobody else you could put the finger on in this game. This was as bad as it gets. I mean, this was when the Jets signed Fields, I said that on his worst day, this offense would look every bit as bad as the offense did with Zach Wilson on his worst day. It did. The defense gave up 13 points. And I'm sorry. You know what? You want to get on the defense for giving up that field goal in the fourth quarter? I don't think it's fair to say that the only way we can win is if the defense pitches a shutout in the second half, because that's essentially what it would have taken the Jets to win this game. The defense can't even give up a field goal in one half of football. That's just unacceptable. And despite all the other issues, the offense got the ball back in decent field position on the final drive with a chance to win the game. And they got that lucky play where Breece Hall picks up the fumble and runs it forward. And then Fields doesn't show any capability of doing anything. This was always going to be a tough matchup for the Jets. Garrett Wilson has always struggled against Patrick Surtain II, and he did once again in this game. And you got to hope Garrett's okay, because Garrett left this game with an injury late in the fourth quarter. So this game shows you what happens when Garrett Wilson's not a factor. What happens to this Jets offense? We'll watch the film. My impression watching live was that Tanner Engstrand tried a little bit of everything. He tried going to the set with Max Mitchell and the 2 tight ends, tried to go to the big set to run the ball effectively. He did what he could to try and free up Garrett Wilson, but Fields just wasn't seeing the field, and Fields was holding the ball and freezing. And when you get played like that, you got no shot. It's almost impossible to win. And the fact that the Jets had a shot to win is testament to how well the defense played in this game. But it was a squandered effort by the offense. And we're going to be honest, the coaching staff. And during the Locked On Jets podcast, I really want to defend this coaching staff, but they make it so hard in so many ways. There's so many ways you see this team is poorly coached. And sometimes the little things cost you games. We'll talk about what some of those little things are as we continue here on this Sunday edition of Locked On Jets. This Sunday episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Mizzen and Main. You know the saying, look good, feel good? The problem is most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They may look sharp, but they feel stiff, hot, and high maintenance. And that's why there's Mizzen and Main. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've perfected it ever since. You can go from the office to dinner or even out on the golf course and still feel comfortable all day. It's the feel of athletic wear, but the look of professional menswear. And right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward is the play that gave the Jets the lead in the second half of their game against the Denver Broncos. They were down 10-9, and there was a play that Denver ran on the shadow of their own goal line. Jets drew 2 penalties, an offensive pass interference call and a holding call in the end zone that took the Jets from 10-9 down to 11-10 up. Oh, it was so close to being a safety that won the game. How fun would that have been? But it was not meant to be. Still a fun play, though. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda. Move and be moved. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. And a big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Unfortunately, we're here today breaking down loss number 6 of the 2025 season for the New York Jets as they fell to the Denver Broncos 13-11 today in London. Aaron Glenn starts his career off as a head coach with an 0-6 record. I really, really want to defend this coaching staff. And the reason for that is I do not want Aaron Glenn to be one and done. I think if the Jets get into a situation where they even have to consider it, it's a lose-lose. Because firing a coach after 1 year, particularly after the dysfunction the Jets have been through over the last decade and a half, it's just an awful situation to be in. So I want Aaron Glenn to work out. And even when the Jets lose, I want to be able to defend the coaching. But it's becoming very, very difficult because you just see little things. And as I mentioned earlier, I was at the game today. There are certain things you don't get to see when you're at the game. You know, like I think it's really beneficial watching the game from home because you get to see like all the different replay angles on certain plays. You get to see who was responsible for a blown coverage, things along those lines, which you don't get to see live. But live, you get to see certain things that you'd miss otherwise. For example, you know, on the last Jets series, we talk about the offensive struggles. Jets have no players that can challenge the Denver offense deep. So in that last series, when the Jets were trying to drive for the game-winning score, there were a couple plays where Denver had I think all 11 guys within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage because they just said, you know what, nobody can beat us over the top. So we'll overwhelm them with numbers if they try and run, or we'll just clog the passing lanes underneath and Fields will hold the ball if his first read's not open and he'll take a sack. That's one of the things you get to see live. Another thing I saw live, and this was true in the first half, they did clean it up a bit in the second half, but it's a small thing, and I think it speaks to some of the struggles with this coaching staff. Substitutions. There was a lot of confusion, guys going in and out of the game on defense and on special teams before field goal attempts. It was like some guy would run on the field, and 2 guys weren't sure which of the 2 of us should run off. There were a couple times the Jets almost got penalties for having too many men on the field because the one guy ran off or somebody stayed on the field who shouldn't have. And that's just kind of emblematic, I think, of some of the issues on the coaching staff. It's just the little things you see over and over. And probably nothing exemplifies those more than what we saw at the end of the first half. Because the Jets took the ball over with 3 minutes and 22 seconds in the first half. They got the ball on their own 16. And they ran out of time before they even crossed midfield. The clock ended to close out the half. And this included a sequence where the Jets ran a fake punt to Breece Hall on their own side of the field. And I'll be honest with you, I try and judge these decisions based on what I'm thinking as they happened. And when that ball went to Breece Hall, I yelled out, "Oh no," because I felt like this was a bad risk to take. Because if the Jets get stopped there, they end up giving the Broncos the ball on their own side of the field. It's 10-6. The Broncos have a chance to go up 2 scores before the half. It's going to be a huge momentum swing. And, the play could be a disaster. Well, the Jets pick it up. Brees ends up picking it up. And I also didn't like the play because I feel like if you're putting Brees Hall out there in the punt formation, that should have set alarm bells off in the Denver defense. They should have known Brees Hall should not be out there. Something was up. So that's another reason I didn't like that call. But you know what? It worked. So we can move on. But I also try and figure out whether there's at least some coherent rationale behind your strategy. And where you lose me is when, you run this huge risk to keep the ball. And you say, you know what? We're going to risk giving the Broncos the ball on our own side of the field late in the first half. If we don't get this, the Broncos are going to be in position to deliver a perhaps knockout blow with a score. That's the risk we're taking because getting points before the half is stealing a possession so important. And then you go and let the clock run out. Something's not adding up there. Essentially you took this huge risk and then you just said, nah, let's stop running. Let's stop trying to score. If you're running this huge risk, what you should be saying, or at least what I think you're saying, is getting points before the half's critical for us to win this game. And then you change your mind. So why'd you take the risk to begin with? The defense was playing pretty well. I mean, this isn't like your typical Jets defensive game where you can't trust the defense to get a stop, where you have to play keep away to prevent the Broncos from scoring. The Jets defense was playing pretty well at that point. They really took the game over in the second half. There's just not a coherent strategy that I'm seeing. And even before the end of the half, there was a 3rd and 7 play where Justin Fields hit Josh Reynolds for 6 yards. So that brought up a 4th and 1 near midfield. And if you went for the 4th down on the fake punt, why wouldn't you go for the 4th down there? Instead, the Jets just let the clock run out. And they didn't even try, they should have gone for the 4th down because they should have tried to get points. But at the very least, they could have let the clock run down and throw in a Hail Mary with 2 seconds left. That leaving those points on the board may have cost the Jets the game, because the offense wasn't doing anything. And we've seen this a lot with Jets offenses where sometimes getting the 2-minute drill kind of gets you to a little bit of a groove because defenses tend to play more conservative. They kind of back off. I mean, how many times did we see Zach Wilson 2 years ago struggle through the first half of a game? Then defenses get a little more conservative near the end of the first half. Jets go into a huddle and start moving the ball. We see this happen a lot. It's a chance to kind of change the pace of the game. And the Jets didn't take advantage of it. They let the clock run out. And those, the points they left on the board there, well, in a game you lose by 2, I think you have to question, what the coaching strategy was. I mean, I'll give you something. Another small thing was right before the fake punt they ran, it ended up being a 4th and 1. The Jets got up to the line of scrimmage to try and do a hard count. And they didn't get up to the line of scrimmage, so there was 10 seconds left on the play clock. And as I'm watching this, I'm saying, if you're going to run the hard count, get up with 25 seconds so that you can run 3 straight hard. You can run 3 or 4 cadences and try and get someone to jump. If you get there with 10 seconds left, they know you're probably not going to snap the ball. It's just these little things that make a difference in a 2-point loss. These little things that just show the coaching staff is not what it should be. I mean, I could go to the second half. 4th quarter. Jets are up 11-10, and they got the ball. And this is an opportunity for an offense that struggled all day to get moving. Justin Fields takes off on a scramble on a 3rd down play. I don't know how good the stadium replays were. I didn't see, I don't know what the NFL Network feed was showing. It looked to be like Justin Fields may have picked up the 1st down based on the replay angles we got. And the replay was running at very weird speeds in the stadium, so maybe I'm off on that. But I thought Fields may have picked it up. Glenn calls a timeout before 4th down and then punts the ball away. Now, first of all, if you're going to call timeout, throw the challenge flag and see if maybe they'll review the play. Maybe you'll get a good call there. But the Jets had 4th down and 1 on their own 30. And I know that's a gamble to take because I know if you don't get it, you give the ball back. But I just felt like watching this game, it seemed to me like Glenn's mindset was we're going to try and win the game 11-10. You're supposed to be this powerful run team. The Jets are one of the reasons the tush push still exists. Jets voted against banning it. They have this big quarterback who's mobile, who'd be great running the tush push. They never run it with him. I don't understand. If there was ever a tailor-made moment where you're 0-5 anyway, it's time to take a gamble. Play to win the game. Go for it. Try and pick up the 1st down. Maybe that sparks the offense. Maybe that gets something going. Instead, they waste a timeout to avoid a delay of game penalty, and they punt the ball away. It's these little things. Man, I really want to like Aaron Glenn. I really want to defend him. But these things may not seem big. In a 2-point loss, though, sometimes they add up. Sometimes they make the difference. And I think the coaching staff has to take some of the heat for this loss. Now, head here on the Locked On Jets podcast. We'll end on a happy note because there is a much maligned unit on this Jets team, the defense. And it deserves to be much maligned because it was terrible through the first 5 weeks, but it really came to play in this game. So let's talk about what went right and whether it's sustainable as we continue here on this Sunday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. Again, it's promo code SHNFL5. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. So you build parlays, you can try player props, you can even follow live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And if you're a Jets fan, you're not seeing many Jets wins this year, but you can win big on FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, it's FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Sunday. Unfortunately, we're breaking down a New York Jets loss. Jets lose in their second country of 2025, falling in the United Kingdom in London to the Denver Broncos today, 13-11. I will give the Jets credit in one aspect of this game. I thought this was an excellent performance by the defense. And look, I've been really, really hard on the defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks. I've criticized him a lot, and I don't think I've been unfair in my criticism. So I'm going to give Steve Wilks, I'm going to give this defense some love because there is no way on earth the Jets should have lost this game with this defensive performance. It was a phenomenal effort by the defense. The first half was pretty good. The second half was just outstanding. The second half was vintage Jets defense. And I mean that as a compliment because as bad as the Jets have been the last 15 years, we've had a lot of really good defenses here. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of really good defensive efforts wasted in games the Jets should have won based on the defensive performance. And we're going to add that to the long list today. So, what went right on defense? I think we'd have to start. I always say it's a players' league. There definitely were personnel changes in this game. And I think a big one was Jermaine Johnson getting back into the lineup was a big deal for this defensive line. One of the things I mentioned last week when it looked like Jermaine was on track to play was every snap Jermaine Johnson gets is a snap that Michael Clemens isn't getting, or Tyler Barron isn't getting, or Braden McGregor isn't getting. And the upgrade from those guys to Jermaine Johnson's pretty large. But it seemed like it had kind of like an outsized effect on the defensive line. And I think it also allowed perhaps Steve Wilks to make some schematic changes, which we'll get to in a bit. There were also some personnel changes in the secondary. And, some of these may have been due to injury, but Jarvis Brownlee, played a lot in the slot. And when the Jets traded for him, he played a lot on the outside last year with Tennessee. But I looked at his skill set, the tackling ability, physicality. It just seemed like to me like he was more of a fit for the slot. And it seems like that's where the Jets are playing him right now, which is a good thing. And then Malachi Moore, who seems to be the new starting safety in place of Tony Adams. And I would imagine it'll stay that way. I thought Moore played pretty well. I didn't see any glaring issues. Again, we'll see what the film says. Now, whenever I give you this Sunday analysis in general, it's always pending how I see the film. It's doubly true this week because I was at the game. But so I did actually get to see the safeties a little bit more than I usually do on the TV angles. But, there's going to be a lot to analyze with the film for me this week. And one thing that seemed to me watching live, and I did catch a couple of stats online that kind of verified this, it did feel like you saw some changes to the way the Jets ran their defense. This seemed like a conversion to more of a bend but don't break style of defense. And the Jets. Aaron Glenn likes to blitz a lot. Aaron Glenn likes to play a lot of man coverage, and the Jets have been burned not just in man coverage, but their zones they've been running some pretty complex zones through the first 5 weeks of the season, and it kind of feels like the Jets went much more conservative on defense. In the first half, you could really feel the bend but don't break nature of things. They were trying to prevent the big play from happening, and outside of one coverage bust, which was pretty egregious, which led to the Denver 1 touchdown of the game, they did a pretty good job of that. It seemed like the tackling was cleaner. And I think a lot of it comes down to they kind of simplified the defense. They were more willing to concede like the short gains as long as they don't get beat over the top. And this is a very valid way to play defense in the NFL. The classic bend but don't break defense in the NFL is not that you're allowing teams to march down the field on you at will. I think like sometimes people hear bend but don't break, they think like, oh, we're just going to allow 12-yard completions all day. Bend but don't break means that you'll allow modest gains, but you're banking on the fact that it's really difficult to execute 10, 11, 12 plays in a row. And at some point, the offense, somebody's going to mess up. A receiver's going to slip on his route. A quarterback's going to miss a throw. An offensive lineman will miss a block. Someone will commit a penalty, and the drive will stall. And again, that's outside of that one drive where they busted the coverage in scoring range. Defense played well. In the second half, it really felt like to me like the defense heated up though, and I think the pass rush. It felt to me the pass rush was kind of getting into Bo Nix's head. I saw a lot of errant throws by Bo Nix in the second half. And if look at the final stat lines. I mean, the Broncos only ran the ball for 3 yards per attempt. Bo Nix only averaged 5.8 yards per attempt. Now he completed 19 of 30, but the Broncos weren't making many big plays in this game. Now the question will be raised, is this the start of something new for the Jets defense? Well, we need to see that. We've had a lot of guys who struggled on the defense this year. I'm not ready to say this Jets defense has turned the corner because I've gotten a little too excited about the offensive points this year, and we've seen where that's gotten me. So I've learned my lesson by getting too excited about the Jets offense. I'm not going to get too excited about one great defensive performance. I think there are a couple things. Is that players need to sustain the performance. It's one thing to go out there and play well once. Another thing to go out there and play well a second time. I think the offenses will also be able to adjust a little bit. They'll be able to see what the Jets have done on film, both personnel wise. They'll be able to scout the new players the Jets are running out there. And scheme-wise, teams are going to see that the Jets may have adjusted their system a little bit. And we'll see whether they can exploit weaknesses in that. Sometimes you see a team catch an opponent by surprise. Next opponent gets the film. It's tougher to do going forward. So, look, the Jets defense is still a long way from being where we want it to be. But this was a good performance. And as I said at the top of the show, I'm sure somebody out there is going to say, oh, the Jets defense didn't get the big stop in the fourth quarter. Something, I'm sorry, but the Jets were down 10-9 in this game, and the defense made a play to take the lead. Defense forced a holding penalty in the end zone for a safety. So essentially, if you're going to get on the Jets defense for allowing that game-winning drive by Denver, you're essentially saying that the defense had to win the game. You're essentially saying the defense had to produce the winning score, and they couldn't allow anything in the second half. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, the offense has to do something. And the other point I'll make is that the offense had the ball in pretty decent field position on their last drive. All they had to do was get into Nick Folk's range. And, nothing's ever a guarantee. But one thing we know about Nick Folk is Nick Folk's pretty clutch. If you give Nick Folk a kick with the game on the line, he's giving you no reason to believe he'll miss it. I mean, there are not a lot of clutch aspects I trust in the Jets. Nick Folk might be the one. And when the Jets get the ball at the 43-yard line, and they don't even get into field goal range after on a game where the offense puts up 9 points in total, all three of them coming on short fields. I'm sorry, you can't get on the defense for giving up the fourth quarter score. It's not fair. You're just asking too much out of that unit, as we've done so frequently through the years. And just shows you that, there have been games, week 1, the defense played a half decent game, Jets would have beat the Steelers. Now in week 6, the offense plays even incredible football. The offense puts together one drive. Just beat the Denver Broncos, but doesn't happen. It's that kind of year for the Jets. Frustrating. But that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. Also, if you enjoy the show, give it a 5-star review if you're watching on the podcast source, or a big thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Try and enjoy the rest of your Sunday after the Jets lost. At least they lost early, so you get to enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be back tomorrow for our regularly scheduled Monday Locked On Jets episode. We'll chat then.